Hey guys, I'm Fancy,
And I'm Stella.
and this is Murder by Design. I am so excited to have you here tonight with us, Stella. So, welcome
Um,
back, everyone. I am beyond excited for this episode. Last week, as you know, I was joined by my daughter Emily, and she'll be back with us again next week. But tonight, we have a lady who started off as a viewer just like y'all. And now is one of the fantastic team members here with us. And of course, I'm talking about Stella, known to all our viewers probably as Stella Bella, and she has been working behind the scenes on this case, and we're finishing it off tonight, which is Skylar Richardson. So we're so excited. You know, when I made that call out, I had really hoped that you were going to actually like send a video in. I can't lie, I was hoping, and you did. And so we're so glad that you are here with us tonight. So
Thank you very much
welcome,
for the
welcome.
opportunity. And good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we've
this
got a
case
lot.
sucked the
Yeah.
life out of me.
I'm telling you, it's a case that's heart wrenching, and I gotta say that now that we've been, I was approached by putting this into different places. I was approached by some of the other side of this, and so now I'm really kind of looking into all of that as well now, which is listening to the father of Baby Annabelle's side of the family, and they've got a lot different opinions and things to
Yes,
say.
yes,
So
they do.
so we're definitely looking into that. But last week we told you Skylar gave birth to a lifeless baby girl, and when the police were notified and Skylar was brought in for questioning, she told the detective she named her baby Annabelle when asked if she had been given her baby a name.
And when Annabelle's remains were given to forensic anthropologist Dr. Beth Murray for examination, for some reason, Dr. Murray just took a quick look at her remains and came to the
Yeah.
conclusion that her bones had been charred and told Detective Fain that that's what her theory was. The baby was burnt.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's just, that seems like, I'm going to ask Joseph Scott Morgan about it because I'm sure he's got some opinions about this.
Yeah,
But
well,
I just can't imagine a medical examiner just making that determination with no like full testing or nope, it's been burned. Yep, that's it. I'm done.
burned hard, maybe with a lighter. She probably wanted to get rid of the remains, and this is what she did. And let me tell you something, that caused the witch hunt against Skylar
It sure
because
did.
he wanted her at that point. That Detective Fain was out to get her. He didn't want to know what the
Yeah,
story was going to be or what the deal
right.
was.
No, because when she was brought in for questioning, the very first thing she said, she was, that's the thing. Like the only thing I've said about this in Skylar's defense, first of all, I think she was a very scared little girl,
Yeah,
and she had a very strange relationship with her mom, and I don't think that that was a good relationship, obviously.
wasn't
Um,
healthy.
it's not healthy. And then what else I've said is that she, every time she's been asked about it though, by different people. So she went into the doctor's office. She was very honest with them and she told them what happened. And then she got called in for questioning because they had to report her. They're mandatory reporters, So she gets called into the police station. And, the very first thing she said is she was born and she wasn't breathing and I buried her. Is that bad? Like, so she was very honest about what she did.
Yeah.
I don't feel like she was being deceptive in that
No,
moment.
no.
Um,
I don't think she was a deceptive child herself. I think she
mm-mm,
was a
mm-mm.
really good kid who followed the rules as they were taught to her. And this was a
Mhm.
mistake and it happened. Unfortunately, I don't know what would have happened had the baby been born alive. What would have happened, but we can't make those
Yeah.
assumptions because
I mean, I
she's
can
a
say I don't
newborn.
know whether the outcome would have been better or different. I don't
Mhm.
know, but we don't know because we don't have that option. Sadly,
No,
we're not there. What we have is
no,
what we have. And so this statement, was crucial point in the interrogation. And Detective Fain asked Skylar about the baby being burnt, and he asked her over the course of this interrogation 17 times, and she kept telling him, I did not burn the baby, I did not burn her. And it got, she was very much in shock from being asked that. You could tell. And I think that, like, this is where I have a real problem with she was yes, she was 18, but she was still in high school, and I think if they're still in high school that their parents should still have to be with them in some ways.
I agree. I
because
agree.
they're not adults,
Yeah,
they're not really adults. They still live in your home. They're still, they're
I
still
agree.
going to school. They are stuck in I want to go to prom. I want to graduate. What school am I going to? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? They are not thinking about what can a police officer, really kind of trap me in, right? They're just not.
Well, the
Right?
interrogations were brutal, and he wouldn't let up on her, which I will
No.
tell you something at the end of this program,
Mm-hmm.
to our audience,
Right.
at the final end of researching it. But boy, oh boy, nothing good came of it,
No.
really. Just a lot of
Mm-mm.
heartache. A lot of
No, and it
heartache.
really became a focus. He heard that. I think and I don't think that he was trying to be malicious. I think he really believed what he had been told by this, you know, death
She
investigator.
recanted. Oh, she recanted a week later.
Right.
She took another look at the remains of Annabella, and
Mm-hmm.
she came back with her findings to him and said it was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I need to recant my statement
Mm-hmm.
and tell you the baby was not charred. I don't know what I was thinking. I had her confused with something else, or I had a lot of caseloads. And he did not take her word for it. And he,
No,
at that point, was running across the
I
finish line. He
agree. And when he
wanted that girl to
Mhm.
go to jail for the rest of her life.
Her life. And when he even went into court, they even, by that point in time, the story had been recanted. The findings had been recanted, and they even asked him about it in court. And he was like, they said, but the doctor has recanted, and he's like, well, okay, but she doesn't, maybe we can't tell, but it could have happened. What do you mean maybe we can't tell, but it could have happened? And she even explained that part of the reason why she made the mistake was that the body was actually wet when she was looking at it. So, I'm thinking that that's like the mud and stuff that was like really caked on there, um, and of course, if she just took a quick glance and made that statement, like, I think the baby was burned, it reminds me of something in a case that we did with Rodney Reed, where a death investigator made a statement and then went back later, and they said it when he was talking about the time frame. He said, if I had ever known that they were going to take this into the courtroom based on my preliminary finding and say that this was the timeline, I would have told them there's absolutely no way that that's going to hold up. Absolutely no way. I would never have said that that was my testimony. And so it reminds me of that, where it's like jumping this gun, and then investigators get really, especially when it comes to kids, investigators get very tunneled, and we've seen it in very many cases where they get
Many
that tunnel
cases.
vision. And once they're on, they're a dog that's
Central
going to
Park
hunt,
5.
they're going to go for that,
Central Park 5.
and
Yep.
that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Same situation. And that's again
Situation.
why I feel that children, children and young, very young adults still in high school, especially with the Central Park 5, even though they had their parents there, their parents had no idea what to do. They were just so misguided in that case as well, and we're going to cover that case later this year. But anyway, so here is how law enforcement tried to get her to admit to what she had done. So the doctor later recants her assessment, after reviewing the infant's bones again, but the second interview took place before she had changed her opinion. So the first time they saw her, she gave her story, she gave her statement, and she was released. No questioning, no charges brought, no nothing. It was this doctor's statement that prompted them to bring her back in the second time. So she told them, I promise on anything, I didn't burn her. My dad has lots of fires, but I didn't burn her. And these are Skylar's exact words, 17 times
Bonfire.
over. She said she did not burn Annabelle. And Detective Carter then said, well, there's some charring and stuff on some of her bones. It just,
He just,
they don't.
he was ready for
Oh,
her. They wanted to
yeah.
see this girl go away for the rest of her life, because that is what she was facing, life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
Had
Yes.
this turned around in a different direction.
Yeah.
And, the trial was a grueling 7 or 8 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I could remember watching the trial and thinking to myself, I was waiting for the medical examiner to give me a cause of death.
Yeah. Never happened. Didn't happen.
Because he couldn't
Didn't
decide
happen.
it. He couldn't identify.
And
He couldn't
right.
determine.
And I have heard some other things. People have asked us, well, why didn't she have an abortion? Well, why didn't she do? Okay, what she states. Now, this is her tale, and as we know, there's always, three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. And so in this case, she states that she didn't find out about being pregnant until about 10 days before the baby was born. Now, if you look at her front ways and you look at her belly front ways, you would never, ever suspect that was a baby bump unless you were someone who really knew that's what, her mom says that she was just thinking that maybe she had finally gotten over some of the bulimic and anorexia that she was facing and that she was really getting back to a healthy weight. So she thought that, maybe that's what that baby bump was. Now, when she turns sideways,
yes,
you
I
can
agree.
kind of see it now. And there is allegings, which is the thing that we're going to be looking into over the next several weeks before we come back with this case again, is that she knew well before that 36-week mark, and that the mom knew as well. Now I'm investigating some information that has come to me late in this game with this. And there's some emails to look at. There's some doctor things. And so that's some of the things that our team is running down right now. But as of this, what we knew and what was presented in court was that she only knew 10 days before the baby's birth. So that's not a lot of time. I mean,
another thing was when he did the ultrasound on her, he told her she had about 10 weeks to deliver.
Right.
That's how small the fetus was.
Right.
So,
and you have to say, I listening to some of the things that I've seen from the father's family, one of the things that they stated, and this does make sense to me, is that even if that is the case, that she was stillborn, they're still feeling that is Skylar's fault, because without the prenatal care and with all of that is what caused this baby to not be a viable baby. So
she wasn't getting any nutrients. It's obvious this girl had two sorts of eating disorders that come into play.
Hang on 1 second, guys. You can keep talking, Stella. I can still hear you, but I'm going to go grab my grandson. He's freaking out now.
She had she was a bulimic and she was anorexic. So, and her mom was very, very hard on her about her weight and criticized her weight. So if Skylar gained just a few pounds, her mother would be very critical of her. And I'll be honest, there were quite a few specials out on Dateline, and I believe it was the Dateline special. I got this impression that the parents were so wonderful and so caring, and they were going to stand by this young girl, their daughter. They loved her so much. They were all about appearances, the mother especially. And when I watched Court TV, the Buried with Love,
yes, the long crime one. Mm-hmm. Let me
tell you something. There was a part where the cameras, they were bringing the parents into the interrogation room, and the mother turned around and said, "What have you done? You ruined our perfect life."
Yeah. And that really was a first look for us at what.
That was the first look. Everything else was looking through it with rose-colored glasses. Oh, I was like, what a wonderful family. Look at this. They're
supportive.
Yeah. Poor girl. Mm-hmm. She should not have been afraid. And in the meantime, I can see why she was afraid. That mother.
I think she was very shallow. Very shallow. Extremely shallow. And, she raised her daughter, in the same manner. So, I feel for the baby's father's family. I do. I feel for them.
I do. Imagine getting that knock on the door.
What?
Imagine getting that knock on the door by these police officers.
Can you imagine? They don't even know that
she was pregnant.
Right.
They didn't know. And for them to.
Well, another thing that I've heard, and like I said, these are just things I've heard so far. We've not vetted them. I've not investigated. But one of the other things that I heard after I was invited into that group was that there was talk at prom about her being pregnant. So, I don't know
those things. Kids at school are very smart. They pick up on, they could tell. They see every day. They know the situation. They know what's going on. I'm just surprised that it didn't leak through, but I find it hard to believe if the kids knew how it didn't get back to the parents.
I think the mother might have known. I do. I think she might have known because what she said. Now that I've got this information, that I've seen the other side, and hearing what she said is, if she was, the first thing she said to her was, if she was born alive, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. Like, she said that to her and so to me that kind of indicated that perhaps maybe she did know. Maybe the mother did know. My gut tells me there's a lot more to the story than what we've heard. I agree. And that is why we will be continuing to look into this. But Richardson made her first court appearance July 21st for her arraignment and was charged with 1 count of reckless homicide. She was then indicted on August 4th on 5 charges, including aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, child endangering, tampering with evidence, and a gross abuse of a corpse, according to WLWT TV reports.
And the general allegations against her are that something during the night of May 6th to May 7th, 2017, that she did give birth to a newborn infant and that she caused the death of the infant. She subsequently burned the infant and buried the infant in the backyard of her own residence. This is what the Warren County prosecutor, David Fornshell, told the same news station.
And I don't know. I can understand. I really think that the burning of the body, it's not unheard of, especially with the fact that they had that bonfire there. But I don't know. For some reason, that doesn't seem plausible to me in this case. I don't know why. I think that she, if anything, if there would have been anything that happened, I think she would have smothered a baby. I don't think that she went out there and thought, well, then I'll burn her and get rid of her. I don't think so, because I don't know.
They needed to build a case. They wanted her, and they wanted to set in her. She was the example, and they didn't care. And obviously, the law was even above the legal team as far as the police officers and the district attorney. They didn't care that statements had been recanted by the medical examiner or anyone else that was investigating this.
Yeah. And Tori, I said that too. I said that there was definitely a sideways baby bump. Yeah, exactly. So,
and her parents hired her a great team of attorneys.
Oh, of course. They had the money to. And I think that's one of the things that really upsets people in this case, is that they were a well-to-do family. If this had been an impoverished family, a minority family, that they would not have been afforded the same type of legal care. They would not have gotten the same kind of, support. People would have been calling for her head on a platter if it had been anyone else, but it was a nice, rich white girl. So, that's affluenza, blame it on affluenza and let's go on.
That's just a shame, because they were able to afford to get in people to give their own opinions. They hired the pros. They hired so many people to give their opinion that more or less voided out what the prosecution had said. They didn't, they were able to void and make them look bad, and they did. Like, it was, for once, I finally saw a trial, as sad as that was that I saw their expert witnesses for the defense truly make the big picture for me and put it into order. And I was just like, well, if you can determine this, how is this jury going to determine it?
Right. So Richardson was back in court. Yeah, I don't know. Well, she was back in court August 7th and pled not guilty to the charges and was released from custody on a oh my goodness, what is wrong with you tonight? Sorry, Stella, go ahead and go forward. I will mute first.
So after her parents put up the $50,000 bond, her father and mother hired a father and son defense team from the area. It was Charles H. Ritgers and his son, Charles M. Ritgers. Skylar was ordered to be under house arrest when she was released on bond and awaiting trial. The lead medical examiner testified he could not determine the cause of death, and he could not admit or deny Annabelle was alive or deceased when Skylar delivered her. The testimony was very important by this medical examiner, because if he couldn't determine if the baby was born stillborn or murdered after she was born alive, how could a jury find Skylar guilty of this crime? Law enforcement and the DA knew this before they filed their charges. How could anyone determine the facts if the professionals couldn't? And I do remember yelling at my computer screen while I was watching this trial, thinking, how could you even go up there to say she murdered her baby when there was nothing to back it up? There was nothing.
No, there wasn't. And that's one of the things with this. Like, you know, a lot of times we hear no body, no case, you know, in cases of missing
was on the table at that point.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, I'm thinking about how oftentimes, you know, we get cases and it's like no body, no murder, you know, and here we are, we've got the baby, but we still can't determine. So how on earth did you go forward with murder charges? That I understand if you could prove it, great. But if you can't, you can't, you know? So the state had many witnesses to try to persuade the jury, but Skylar's defense team had a team of experts that would state the facts as they were. The experts really shed a lot of light to this terrible tragedy. Skylar truly was a girl that had so many problems. She lived in a household where appearances was everything. And I didn't mean everything, literally everything. And after both sides rested, the jury deliberated about 4 hours in total, and they came back with a verdict of not guilty for the most serious charge and guilty on the charge of abuse of a corpse. The jury was made up of 7 women and 5 men, and Skylar was acquitted on the most serious charges. So, you know, they go at the very end of the trial, the judge in this case, he had one last thing to say to the Scott Richardson, Skylar's father, and he basically said he would give Annabelle's remains to the family for a proper burial. The judge also stipulated that Trey Johnson and his family have access to the grave anytime they wish, and Annabelle was their baby also. Scott gave his word to the judge, and Annabelle had a proper burial in a cemetery at some point. So, you know, the judge, he was harsh. He even told her that he told her that he believed that she was, no matter what, the cause of her baby's death. You know, he was harsh. He couldn't go, you know, he couldn't go further than what the law allowed him to give her, but he was hard in what he said to her, and he felt that she needed a rude awakening, you know. So,
well, when the trial ended outside of the courtroom, the county prosecutor made his statement after the verdict, and he said he believed no cause of death contributed to the verdict. And that is exactly what I was yelling all along. How could you, find her guilty of murdering an infant when there was no cause of death? It was just indecisive. They couldn't determine it either way.
Right, because if the baby was born stillborn and she just buried the baby in the backyard, there's nothing wrong with that, unless you want to allege that the lack of care was a direct resulting in what happened to the baby, and you still can't make that determination. You can assume it is. I would assume that it probably would have played a big part in it, but you cannot attribute it to that enough from what they had. You know, they had
bones. There was nothing.
They only had bones. Right.
There was no skeletal remain. There was no soft tissue. There wasn't anything. There was no flesh. She was just bones. They put her little skeleton together. There was nothing.
Right.
left with this
So,
baby.
bottom line in this is we maybe feel she did murder Annabelle, but the evidence didn't back up the charges. And maybe Annabelle would be alive had Skylar made better choices or was able to confide in or get help from somebody. But we're not going to know that. We just won't. Um, so
And with an eating disorder, they're not in their right frame of mind to begin with.
no,
I think they're
no.
in some sort of a denial. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a doctor. I play one on TV once in a while, but I think about you go into their mental, if they can do what they're doing to themselves, how can they cannot care for themselves properly. How could they care
Right.
for anything else?
Right.
And I just think that this was a losing situation from day one.
I
And
agree.
I don't know how she will really begin to build her life. I mean, I've read that she has been building her life slowly but surely, but the stigma is always going to be there. And she's always going to be known as that girl.
And I'm going to tell you, the community is not extremely supportive of her. They are not happy with her.
No.
And she kind of gets away with a slap on the wrist here. I have to say, she gets sentenced to 7 days in jail.
7 days served. That was it.
But she'd already served those 7 days before the trial. So the judge then says that she would go home because time was served, and then she was sentenced to 3 years probation. Now you think that the story would end there. It doesn't. And this is where I sort of get a little irritated because I feel like you're looking a gift horse in the mouth, young lady. You got off. You did not get charged with murder. You did not do any jail time. You got away with 3 years of just probation when it could have been way worse. You get to go on and live your life, whereas Annabelle does not. And you've had more time to process this than the father, and his family. And they're hurt because if none of this had come out, they would have never even known and never been able to even grieve the loss of a child.
There was one, and that family seemed to have had taken it very hard. The parents were distraught.
I think so.
They said that they would have taken the baby had wanted to give it up. They would have raised the baby as their own. But there was no options for anyone.
Right.
No option.
No. And so in November of 2020, Skylar, who'd already turned 21, and her attorneys requested termination of probation after only 14 months of abiding Judge Oda, of abiding the rules, and Judge Oda felt that Skylar was doing well and fully compliant. And so Skylar continues to get treatment for her mental health and works with the law office of her defense attorneys. So she has hopes of going to law school in the future. And again, this is bittersweet because here she is trying to make something of herself still, but what kind of life does she get to go on to have, whereas this little girl, this baby, never got a chance, And
how about the father of the baby? His name was brought out into this. She admitted who he was, and how about his life? And normally, it's usually the boyfriends that will harm the child, but not in this case. But in most cases,
or abandon the child, generally, abandon the child. The mother's always left.
They take the baby and it's just crazy. And this he sounded like a nice boy from a good family also. And they didn't have a choice. It was taken from them. It's just, this should be put in the books and kids should learn from it in school, in health, because these things happen, and how many babies are going to be lost because of kids being afraid. I mean, they should have a number that they can call at any time. I'm sure there is a number, but she could have, if she was so popular, I'm sure there were teachers that would have helped her. Didn't a teacher recognize that she was a little belly? I don't know.
I mean, I just think if she fell through the cracks, again, it's one of those cases where the girl fell through the cracks, and in one of the documentaries that was made, Buried with Love, you can hear her mother saying to Skylar, "You ruined our perfect life," which is what Stella said earlier. And the parents, like you said, they had me fooled until I started looking into it. And then the amount of pressure that was put on Skylar to be the perfect daughter, so harmful.
You're my perfect daughter, so perfect. And really,
right.
And this is a sin. that happened. It's a tragedy. And
It is.
I
And
would
it's,
hope
and
that
I,
she learns from it. I don't know.
yeah.
I just don't know
Mhm.
how, without the proper help, she's only
Yeah.
21 years old now. She's
Right.
got
Right.
her whole life ahead of her. I think she's so lost.
Hmm.
And I don't
Yeah.
know that, I don't want to say that will happen again, but I don't know how functioning she is going to be. I mean, I really hope the best for her, but
I do too. And this one is really a heart wrencher. And I honestly, like you said, I had no idea how deep it really went until we started
very,
looking into it. And as I said, so last week on one of our Facebook posts about this case, a group member commented that we perhaps don't have all the sides of this. And so we were invited to a group that had a more personal connection to baby Annabelle's father's side. And they are a family in the throes of grief, and they feel an injustice has been done with the light nature of Skylar's sentencing. So this is the last we'll be covering this case. So give us a bit to dive in and hear the other side of things. And then we'll be back with maybe a couple more episodes to really give the story from all sides.
I would
And,
love them.
we're always about that. We are always aiming for the closest to the truth as possible. We did that with the Gypsy case. We've done it with several other cases that we've looked into. And we're going to continue on with this idea of something kind of controversial like this that has to deal with teenage kids and teenagers and their mindset and everything. Our next crime of the month is actually going to be the Conrad Roy Michelle Carter case. And if you don't know that case, that is the case of two very troubled teens, both with their own mental health issues, and there is a suicide that happens that some people think was murder. That it was a push to suicide for the one, and in the same thing, many people think that she didn't get enough time. Many
I was
people
very
believe that.
vocal with that one.
Yeah,
I
I
was very
mean,
vocal with that one.
many people believe that it's one of those things, and some people think well, how could what does she have? He would have committed suicide anyway. So we go back and forth. So I think that's going to be another really lively one. I'm glad that we'll have Stella with us on that one, because I know she has opinions on that case.
Yeah, I was very vocal on social media with that one, and with my date night crew and everyone that at CrimeCon. That girl, again, I don't want to spoil it, but oh my goodness, if that boy, now talk about wrenching his parents, his mother. Oh, God, terrible.
But I mean, I think of it as that case reminds me of the beginning of Evil Lives Here, where they chart, they say, blah, 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 but there were signs. There were signs in this case. Mom and dad, there were signs.
Yeah,
He was a very troubled teen, and he should have been getting better help. And
absolutely,
and we
absolutely.
see that so often in these teen cases, which is why Amanda and I just talked about in our psych talk a couple weeks ago was the life sentencing of minors, and the development of their brains not being fully formed until the age of 25, and is it legal, or is not with legal, but is it within the scope of justice to be giving teens life sentences, at the age of 13, 14 years old? Is it right? Depending on, and we talked about this in great depth. And so you guys should definitely check out that psych talk that I did with Amanda. It gives a lot of insight into
I did.
the psyche, into the psyche of that, and what the justice system is looking at now, and how they're really starting to process teens differently through the justice system. So I really do think that we have to be a society that pays attention more, though, especially when we're talking about our teenagers. I think we don't pay attention to mental health as it is on a high enough plane, but when you're talking about teenagers and the minds that they have, parents and everyone around them really need to be paying more attention. I think that things like Columbine could have been prevented if people had been paying attention. It's just these different cases. The Slenderman girls. If the Slenderman girls, if the mom had paid attention, that she knew her daughter had tendencies like her father on schizophrenia and had gotten her help, then that case wouldn't have gone down the way it is. And so we're going to
No.
be talking about
I mean,
several
we're
of those.
talking about children killing children,
Yes.
whether they're a teenager or a tween or 5 years old and picking up their father's gun by accident.
Right.
It's
I've
children
watched a bunch of them.
it's of epidemic proportions.
It really is.
And
I've watched a couple
always
of them.
has been, but we know about more of it because of social media.
Let's see, I watched Skylar Niece, which was a very interesting case. The two best friends ended up doing something with them. I watched the case, there's a serial or women in behind bars or whatever with Pierce Morgan. He does one with a young lady who lured her ex-boyfriend to be murdered in there. And it is very heart-wrenching and very cold. That girl is cold.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you see her in there talking with her friends on camera and in the interrogation room when she doesn't think anybody's watching. Wow. Cold. Yeah. Cold piece. And then she comes out and she cries about it, later. And I'm like, girlfriend, no, you did that. And that was all because of you, and it just, it was awful so we'll be talking about a lot of these types of cases here. I told you guys in 2021, we wanted to really get into more of a psychological focus, over here on Murder by Design. And then, we are kicking off the first, episode of season 3 of The Good Wife's Guide to True Crime. It will be coming out at the very end of February or the first week of March, just depending on how quickly we get them done. But the very first case we're covering is Chris Watts. So that's going to be a crazy, gut-wrenching one as well, because I have lots of opinions on that case, let me tell you.
Chris,
I stayed away from that case for the longest time.
I'm very opinionated on that one, and I think you know where I'm going with it. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I don't want to victim shame or anything right now because it's not the time or the place. But final note, Detective Fain on Skylar Richardson, the lead detective, after the trial was over, he was forced, actually they demoted him back into uniform, and they forced him, he wound up retiring. Pretty much they forced him out of the police force or off the police force because of the way he interrogated her and went after her, and the publicity was so bad for that police department.
Leading that he did. He led her, and
he led her in. He was leading her.
He just kept asking her and wearing her down. She wasn't given any food. She wasn't allowed to leave the room to go to the bathroom. Her parents weren't in there with her. The whole. Not that I think that parents might have been any help. Honestly,
no. I think they would have said arrest her, so this way this can go away. I don't really know what they would have done. I'm being honest.
I don't know. I just
what I thought about them at the time to what I think about them now. I'm not fond of them. I'm sorry. I think that they really didn't care enough about this. Girl had a lot of issues that didn't just come overnight. I'm sorry.
No. You don't have an eating disorder. You don't have an eating disorder, or 2 eating disorders, even if your family life is good.
And then you kept accusing her, lie. I can't believe anything you say. All you do is lie. All you do is lie. Well, I think the eating disorder, the lying, the fibs, I think it all goes hand in hand. I think she's had to lie so much.
It does.
To get them off of her back. I still don't think she was a bad girl. And I feel sorry because we might all know someone that has a child like that, and they're adults now. And where are they? Still back to where they were in their mother's eyes at 10 years old or 14 or 16. And in the meantime, they're in their 40s and still can't function because they're still lying. They're still doing the same thing. And the eating disorder really doesn't go away. It really doesn't go away. Very few. I think it's like a 5%. When they get cured, they remain cured. And most of the time, when a girl has an eating disorder and she gets pregnant for some reason, and they don't know what the connection is, but it's been proven that she will eat and be healthy for those 9 months until she delivers the baby. It's almost like a heroin addict who will stop using drugs during the pregnancy.
Mhm.
It's maternal instinct kicks in
Mhm.
during the time of the pregnancy. So,
And that
I
didn't
mean,
happen in this case. That didn't happen in this
no,
case.
I think because maybe she had two of them fighting the two eating disorders fighting each other. They were,
Right.
I don't think there was anybody was going to win here. I'm surprised
No.
she's alive.
Right. Exactly.
I
Okay.
don't
So
know.
Robin Red says that another case to look into is Shanda Sharer. I will look at that case. I haven't heard of that one, but I will definitely look into it, Rhonda,
That's
and we'll
a
see
good
what we can
case.
do about
I
it.
agree. It's a
Yeah.
very good case.
Oh, good. I haven't heard of that one. That's one I haven't heard of. But
Yes.
anyway, guys. Okay. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and dishing true crime with the Good Wives and Murder by Design.
Thank you,
Don't
everyone.
Don't forget to join our Patreon member club to get exclusive mini episodes, inside documents and pictures from the case, live YouTube discussions, and our exclusive discussion group on Facebook, and get some amazing Good Wives merch. And we also do have our yearly subscription. If you want to save yourselves a little bit of money, you can go over to madgingerentertainment.com. You get all the same stuff, and including a little bit of extra bonuses. So follow us on Twitter and Instagram at True Crime Wives. And for more insight information, check out our podcast, The Good Wives Guide to True Crime, on any of your favorite podcast players. Have a good one from The Good Wives, serving up true crime one dish at a time. Bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.